Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another live stream here on the channel. Hopefully everyone is having a great day. Hopefully you're better than I am. I'm getting over a sickness, feeling a little bit better today, but still feel pretty sick, so we'll see how this goes. Hopefully it doesn't make it worse for tomorrow. But we'll go ahead and try to wing it here. So let's see who we have in the chat so far. We have Jake, Caleb, Sam, as well as Catman. We also have Critty in here. Let's see, Brooklyn, Proxy, Michael, Pez, Haley, and Jefferson, as well as everyone else who's in the chat who I may have forgotten to welcome, or if you're just now tuning in, welcome to the stream. Josh, Use the Force, and Christian, glad to see you guys all in here. Alrighty, let's go ahead and switch on over. Hopefully everything looks good to go. I do want to check if we are live. Yes, we are. I did a bunch of cleaning on my computer and tried to make it perform better, so I was wondering if I screwed it up somehow, but it looks like I didn't, so at least, I guess that's a plus. That's a plus. It turned on, so we're good in that side of things. I did that a while ago, though. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to... Wait, what is that? 18 hours ago. Okay, why are you showing up 18 hours ago? Hold on. Let's go fix that. We got to go to the reports. Can't be having reports from 18 hours ago showing up here. Let's see. Make sure that's on 1. There we go. There you go. Now it disappeared. Can't be having 18-hour-old reports here. Thank you, Jefferson, for the 5 gifted. Appreciate it. Thank you for the 5 gifted. Sadly, Pez got 1, but thankfully 4 good members of the channel got that. Proxy, of course, I already know you're in here, as well as Aaron and Chris. Make sure you guys thank Jefferson for that membership. Sadly, Jefferson gave Pez 1. That's highly unfortunate. That one went to great waste. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive on into it. We've got a day 1 enhanced risk for severe weather today. Let me go ahead and pull this over here. So there you go. We've got a pretty large level 1 marginal, pretty large level 2, and then a level 3 out of 5 for severe weather today. We also have 2 other level 2s out of 5 for severe storms today. So a lot of people under the gun for some pretty good severe weather today. I don't expect a whole lot out of these 2. There is the risk for a brief tornado out of one of these risks. and the risk for 1-inch hail with them. But the main threat with those is going to be 60 to 65 mile an hour wind gusts. So not really worried too much about those two other slight risks for severe weather. This is going to be what we really have to watch right here. This is the big boy right here. We're talking upwards of 80 mile an hour winds here, 80 mile an hour winds across the enhanced risk, maybe even extending into the slight risk. Upwards of 2.5-inch hail also being possible, and then also a couple of tornadoes, maybe even a strong tornado or two being a possibility here in and around that enhanced risk area. So once again, these two yellow areas here, main threat 60 to 65 mile an hour winds, up to 1-inch hail, and maybe a spin up tornado. And then this is your main risk area, again, up to about 2.5-inch hail, up to 80 mile an hour winds, and a few tornadoes, maybe 1 or 2 strong possible there. So that's what we are looking at. And then, of course, we also have the marginal filling in there. Marginal, not really much of a big threat for severe weather. Just keep an eye out for an isolated wind gust. That's really the main threat in the marginal if you're under that level 1 out of 5 dark green for today. Thank you, Jefferson, for the $5 donation. Appreciate it. Let me go heart that real quick. There you go. Appreciate the $5 donation. I guess I love giving out money. All right, so yeah, let's also go to our day 2 outlook, where we have yet another familiar outlook. It's the same categorical risk here. Same categorical level 1, level 2, and level 3 out of 5. So pretty good risk for severe storms for tomorrow as well. However, there's a catch. We actually have a pretty high tornado threat for tomorrow, considerably higher than today. And I do think if we don't see morning convection tomorrow, it wouldn't shock me if this goes moderate for tornadoes tomorrow across northern Illinois, eastern Iowa, and into southern Wisconsin. So we'll really need to watch that for tomorrow's threat, that tornado threat, potentially pretty high end there. Damaging winds also likely going to be an issue. Now, we're not looking at very significant damaging winds, but we are still looking at widespread damaging winds of 60 to 70 miles per hour. But our wind gusts aren't really expected to exceed 70 to 80 miles per hour, so we shouldn't see many significant wind gusts over 74 miles per hour tomorrow. Just an isolated event of 70 to 75 mile an hour winds possible tomorrow, but the main threat is going to be those lower and severe widespread 60 to 70 mile an hour winds. And of course, that tornado threat, the highest risk. And then the hail risk is actually, I believe this got upgraded. I don't really think hail will be much of an issue tomorrow either. Maybe just a couple instances of 1 to 1.5-inch hail. We could see that isolated significant hailstone up to 2 inches in diameter, but I don't really think hail will exceed really 1.5 inches in diameter. I don't expect much hail for tomorrow. Main threat, tornadoes is the main threat, followed by damaging winds and then hail. And then we do it all over again. Here's your day 3 risk for severe weather. And it looks pretty familiar because it actually looks exactly the same as the last 2. Because it's the same categorical risk. We've got 3 back-to-back-to-back enhanced risks for severe weather. Not very often we see that. Now, it is definitely more common as you go into March, April, May. But all back-to-back like this on the day 1, the day 2, and the day 3 outlook, pretty unusual for even peak tornado season. Not too often you see that. Let me go over. I got to see what day this is for because I honestly haven't been paying much attention to these risks. This looks to be for Friday. So this is Friday's risk for severe weather. And it looks like that main threat for severe weather will really focus back up here in Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois. Maybe going into western Illinois. Main threat, definitely damaging winds. It looks like this is a QLCS threat right here. So it seems like the main threat is going to be isolated large hail upwards of 2 inches in diameter. Widespread damaging winds of 65 to 75 miles per hour. Maybe even a few gusts upwards of 80 miles per hour. And if we do see that QLCS grow upscale quite quickly, then we could see also a couple embedded tornadoes there, especially back down into Oklahoma, southern Kansas. But also, I would be keeping an eye out for maybe less of a QLCS threat, maybe more of a discrete supercell threat back up there into Iowa. That might be a strong tornado threat there if storms can develop more semi-discrete further up to the north, closer to, at least closer to that surface low. Now, the main surface low will still be back into South Dakota as this event on Friday is ongoing. But if there is going to be a strong tornado threat, it's probably going to end up being on that more northern side if those storms can be more semi-discrete. So, conditional strong tornado threat. Main risk is going to be embedded tornadoes inside a QLCS, and that QLCS will have widespread 60 to 75 mile-an-hour wind gusts, maybe a couple gusts upwards of 80. And if any storms are semi-discrete, closer to that low pressure, again, conditional strong tornado threat, and a conditional large hail threat upwards of 2 inches in diameter for that large hail. Let's see. But I'm not extremely impressed with this threat for severe weather. I'm really not too overly concerned with Friday's threat. Okay, sorry. Distracted. I wanted to check the day one real quick. So I think tomorrow is probably... Yeah, that's probably the threat that I'm most concerned about. And again... Friday, this risk might be a little bit too far to the east. That's also what I was checking there. Might be a little bit too far east with that main risk for severe weather. So I wouldn't be shocked if that enhanced risk gets pulled back a little bit closer to eastern Kansas, closer to eastern Nebraska. I think that enhanced risk should shift. Actually, maybe not shift, but maybe expand. Maybe just push that enhanced risk a little further west, and then push that slight risk the slightest bit further to the west. Because based on what I'm seeing on these models here, it looks like they've got that main risk just a tad bit too far to the east. But they'll adjust that accordingly. We could easily see the system speed up, and then it ends up, all the models start pointing towards exactly what the SPC is calling for. But regardless, whether it's a little bit further east in eastern Iowa or a little bit further west into southwestern Iowa, again, same hazards we're really looking at. We're really looking at that widespread damaging wind threat of 60 to 75 miles an hour embedded in a QLCS. Multiple spin-up weak tornadoes, and then that conditional strong tornado threat and conditional very large hail threat upwards of 2 inches in diameter if storms fire discrete. So that's the basic quick rundown of things right there. We'll go a bit more in depth in just a second. Gracious. This sickness isn't like a terrible sickness. It's one of them annoying ones. I got a stuffy nose, but my nose is also runny. I've got a cough. My throat itches. It's one of them annoying sicknesses. It's not one of the sicknesses that like put you down for days. But I have a feeling it's one of those long duration sicknesses that last like a freaking week. And it has to hit me at not the worst time, thankfully. The worst time would have been at the end of last week when Lucky came up here. But still not a very convenient time with all this severe weather happening. Covering tonight, maybe. I love dryline threats. I love covering dryline threats. So I would love to cover it. I'll just kind of see. Let's see here. Yeah, it looks like storms really blow up about 6:30. So about 2 hours from now. That definitely looks like a pretty good severe threat. Let me go ahead and show y'all. Ooh, this is the new HRRR. Haven't seen this one yet. So if we pull this back, this is about 6 o'clock, and storms will begin to fire in far southwest Oklahoma, far northeastern panhandle of Texas. And by 7 p.m., that's when these things are really starting to become severe, really starting to be strong storms here. And 8 o'clock, you can see how quickly these grow upscale, right? So I'm not really thinking... I'm glad you caught on to that, Kaylee. I sure did. Not really thinking that we'll have a huge tornado threat today. I think the best tornado threat will be really limited to, there's kind of three areas I'm going to be watching. Any semi-discrete activity in northern Oklahoma, southern Kansas, any tail end Charlies down here in southern Oklahoma, and I would bet on this being probably the best target area right here. And then into the overnight hours, I would be concerned about a potential QLCS tornado threat across the entirety of that line as it moves off to the east. So really three main things here. I'm not too overly concerned about that tornado threat. Today's risk doesn't really impress me particularly. But it's definitely a really, really good day to be weather aware. Definitely a day where we could see a couple hailstones upwards of 2 inches in diameter if these storms do become more discrete like this, where they're more away from that messy cluster or messy line. It's either going to be a cluster or a line. We'll have to see. We got a new NAM coming in here. Yeah, NAM also says about 6 o'clock is when these storms start to fire. Actually says we could be seeing a little updrafts now. Not seeing anything fire right now, so good old NAM being dead wrong. Let's go over to mesoanalysis, as Proxy literally just said it. I was literally just gonna go over to that because I was waiting for the new 20Z update. 20Z is out. Yeah, I could see why the NAM is wanting storms to fire right now. Yeah, definitely not that bad of a look down here into southwest Oklahoma. The end of the panhandle of northern Texas, and then into, what is that, like maybe the, I'll go look. Yeah, east-northeast of the Lubbock area. Right in there. Could see some convection fire. But see, this is something that's interesting here. If we go over to here, we've had this pretty thick cloud cover. Honestly, pretty thick cloud cover over the western side of our main risk, or the western side of our overall risk area. Now, I don't think this overlaps with our highest threat for severe weather. I'm pretty sure that northwest side is only in a slight risk for severe storms. Yeah, so that cloud cover barely hits our slight risk for severe storms. But about like 2 hours ago, about 4 hours ago, you could see that was a little bit more towards, we had some of that thicker cloud cover towards central Oklahoma, southern Kansas, central Oklahoma, maybe into in the northern panhandle of Texas there. And then again, you could see that's kind of pushing more to the east. So that cloud cover that was over central Oklahoma is now over closer to Tulsa. And the cloud cover that was over the northern panhandle of Texas is now closer to southwestern Oklahoma. So we should see this cloud cover continue to push eastward. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because I think that could really help kind of stabilize our temperatures. Our temperatures are getting a bit out of control across like southeastern Oklahoma here. You see we are up to 82 degrees, 81 degrees. So when that cloud cover comes overhead, hopefully that will end up, if you're wanting a tornado threat today, that's hopefully in a storm chaser's perspective. Hopefully that cloud cover helps inhibit some of these other MEDARs here from observing greater than 80-degree temperatures, because this is definitely more of an elevated profile type of day here. You really don't have any of these that are like 5 temperature degree dew point spreads here. Like this is a 20, this is a 20. Let's see, this down here is what, like 13-ish. This is 12. So a lot of these are more elevated profiles, and that would be way worse if we didn't have some of that cloud cover that I showed you from about 2 hours ago here. If we didn't have some of this cloud cover even actively ongoing across this area, today's tornado threat would be considerably lower. So I don't think we're looking at a good tornado threat until maybe dark. Once we get towards 7, 8 p.m., towards sunset, I think that will be where our tornado threat increases, but you're going to have that short window. There's going to be a very short window, and it's a very, very short window, which is why we don't have a 10 sig tor today. We have that big 5%. Because once you get into the sunset hours and into the overnight hours, well, obviously, the sun goes down, and the sun is what provides us our instability. So that's going to mean your CAPE is going to be decreasing. Your energy for these storms will be decreasing, and your temperatures will be decreasing. So your temperatures are decreasing, allowing for that tornado threat to go up, but your instability is decreasing, allowing for that tornado threat to go down. So there's going to be this brief window, maybe closer to 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, maybe even 30 minutes to an hour after that, where your CAPE is still high, but your temperatures are decreasing. And that's going to be where our tornado threat maximizes, which, again, if we just go out here, that might be close to here. This is 4 hours. This is about 8 p.m. If I just zoom out for you. And you can see right there, barely off your screen, southwestern Oklahoma. That would be your hot spot at 8 p.m. So that's probably where I would target for a tornado threat. I don't know about that storm in northern Oklahoma being possible. If you guys remember, we had a storm that fired in a pretty good environment along a warm front in northern Oklahoma a couple weeks back, and that went on to produce like 2 or 3 EF2s. And I don't know if we'll see the same case with this scenario, but that is a possibility. But I just feel like that profile is going to be too elevated in northern Oklahoma. So I would bet on southwestern Oklahoma being the best target. I would probably be towards, probably near Magnum. Or Mangum. I said Magnum. Mangum. That's a weird town name right there. That's what a sickness will do to you. Completely make you mispronounce town names. Not like I already don't do that. A lot of models have shown that, and they're going for the chasers are going for that warm front. Don't fall for the bait. It's bait. They're falling for the bait. The real target is southwestern Oklahoma. They're falling for the bait. Let me go check the... Is the new HRRR on here? Okay, it is. This is the 19Z. I mean, that's not horrible. 76 and like 64, 65. It's close to elevated, but it's not properly elevated. None of these are like great, honestly. I would just bet on... This would be the area I would be going for. Southwestern Oklahoma. That warm front definitely could do something. That's probably your 2 main target areas. And then, like I said, we have that QLCS overnight tornado threat. This would be your overnight QLCS tornado threat right in here. But I don't know about that warm front. I do think the warm front will get that far north. So if you are targeting the warm front today, I would definitely go towards like Enid. I would be right around here. If I was going for the warm front, Enid. If I was going for like a tail end Charlie, back out here. Those would be my 2 main target areas of where to start at. North of OKC. You're on the edge of that enhanced risk. Definitely a risk for a few tornadoes. Maybe an isolated strong tornado somewhere in the risk area, but I doubt it will be towards Edmond. Damaging winds is definitely the biggest problem as those storms grow upscale, widespread 60 to 70 mile an hour wind gusts. And then wouldn't rule out, 1 to 1.5 inch hail. I think the highest hail threat and the best chance for a strong tornado today will be limited to right in here. That's where your highest hail threat will be and your best chance to see a couple tornadoes. Your best chance for like a few brief spin-up tornadoes and some damaging winds would be further to the east, more towards out here. There's going to be a very fine line between where these storms grow upscale and where they're still producing very large hail. Like the new HRRR, that really has, yeah, that really shows your main damaging wind threat is right where I have circled there. And your main hail threat is really in western Oklahoma, southwest Oklahoma, and then as well as with some random supercell it has firing on the warm front up here. It could be pretty rough overnight, yeah. It could be pretty rough overnight. I would definitely keep an eye out there towards about 9 p.m. Starting about 9 p.m. Central. Storms are expected to fire here in about an hour and a half. And I'll watch them. I'll probably be on standby for an urgent live stream if I need to be live. I'll be on standby just in case. But I'm going to try to save my energy for tomorrow because that's the threat I'm really interested in. That's the threat that I think could go pretty big. But it all comes down, really tomorrow, all comes down to overconvection. That's going to be the big thing. If we don't see overconvection in the afternoon, we're probably going to see a tornado outbreak tomorrow. If we do see overconvection, it's going to be a more conditional tornado threat, but we'll still likely see a few tornadoes. March was overall quite inactive. I think we're used to seeing historic outbreaks because of 2024 and 2025. That was probably an average March. That was probably an average, maybe a little bit above average March. Even tornado-wise, it was probably about average. I just think we're used to seeing upper echelon events, so I wouldn't necessarily call it like, inactive. Inactive is that's a pretty crazy word to describe March. I mean, we had what, at least three very widespread damaging wind events in March. And we had a bunch of tornadoes, just not a lot of them were very, very notable. Outside of, we had the Michigan tours, and then we had that Northwest Indiana tornado. I think those were the two most notable ones. And then also northern Oklahoma, March 5th. But yeah, I would say March was probably roughly average. Now, you'd have to give me like a good month plus to see how all the reports come in and whatnot, because we still are receiving reports from a few severe weather events, especially yesterday's. Yeah, tomorrow could go moderate for Tor. I will be live at some point tomorrow. I'm hoping to be live for a few hours tomorrow. I really want to try to be live for a few hours tomorrow, but I'm going to be busy in the early afternoon hours, so I won't be live until after 3 p.m. I know that for a fact, so... But I should be live somewhere between 3 and 9? 3 and 9 Eastern. Somewhere between 3 and 9 Eastern. SIG 2, 15% or 15% SIG 1? Well, here's the thing. 15% SIG 1 is enhanced. So 15 SIG 2. But I would be shocked if they pull that in the morning update. The first thing I would love to see is there overconvection in the open warm sector? Because if you do have a trough like this, if we do have a trough here at 18Z shaped like this, where it's a negatively tilted trough this early on, what that allows for is that allows for a lot of divergence and defluence aloft. And so you're going to get a void out here. And that means that there's going to be convection that's filled in throughout the afternoon. And you can see all of this is crapvection. This is all crapvection. All in here is crapvection. Your severe threat would be possibly with this area right in here moving to the northeast. And then definitely with the surface low right in here moving to the northeast. So it depends on the trough. If the trough arrives too early, which it looks like a lot of these are starting to predict that here. You see the NAM agrees with the trough arriving fairly early. So I don't think we're going to see a moderate. It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think we're going to see one because overconvection can very much be an issue. You could see even the NAM 3K here portrays overconvection. So it looks like all of our models, the NAM 3K, the NAM, the WRAP, although the WRAP is a little bit sooner with that morning and afternoon convection. The HRRR, most are portraying that issue. So you really don't see your full potential. Now, if we do see that afternoon convection, I mean, you'll still have a tornado threat in this area. For sure. The main area would be right along that front, right in here in eastern Iowa. But there would also be a secondary area with maybe the afternoon convection. That could actually pose a tornado threat. But also with any other storms that may be able to fire very late in the evening hours. So if there is overconvection, keep an eye out on the overconvection itself, because the overconvection could actually turn into a tornado threat. 10 sig 2? The reason why I was posting NATOcast a lot is because NATOcast is down on Twitter, so I was trying to fill that gap. Because a lot of people were wondering what happened to NATOcast, and they don't know how to access NATOcast without just looking at NATOcast's profile. So that's why I was posting it a lot. And plus, I agreed with NATOcast a lot more than the SBC for tomorrow's risk. Now, the SBC did since fix their outlook, but their day 3 outlook was atrocious, to say the least. Let me see if I can find it for you guys. Okay, let me go all the way back to their day 3 outlook, which was issued yesterday. Yeah, here it is. This was their old outlook. This was their old outlook from yesterday. Look at the difference between the two. You could see they literally, where they have the enhanced risk now, part of that was literally in the marginal risk. on their old update, and their slight risk was way too far off to the east southeast. Definitely one of the more disagreeable outlooks the SPC put out earlier yesterday. But the good news is they fixed it to the latest data. And yeah, like I said, I mean, I agree with their outlook completely right now. I don't think if anybody is thinking a moderate should be issued right now, you're hyping. There's no way. There's not enough confidence for a moderate right now by any means. So I would wait definitely until at least the 1630Z update, which would be between these two scans here, to see how overconvection looks. If we start seeing overconvection firing here in Missouri, I know that's going to help wipe out the warm sector. And you also want to see where your low pressure is at that time, as well as where your main front is placed. So I'm impressed. On paper, this setup looks great. On paper. But the thing is, you got to look under that surface and under what just the surface of the paper shows. You got to look more in depth. And then that's where you start to see, well, you know what? Overconvection could be an issue. Forcing also has a chance to be an issue, to where storms are just, they don't have enough forcing to literally survive. So they just end up being like these storms here, where you just get miniature supercells. So on paper, great setup, but definitely 2 to 3 things that I want to check to see how big this threat may actually be. I will say the trough has definitely uptrended in the last couple runs, at least I think. And look, well, I mean, maybe not. Yeah, it has. It looks more to the west-southwest and a bit more organized, a bit more compact. Friday, I'm not overly interested in. The only area I'm interested in for Friday's tornado threat is really somewhere in Iowa, into Missouri, maybe even into Kansas. Just wherever that kind of triple point almost sets up there. I don't think it's gonna be a triple point, but it kind of looks like that. Just wherever those two, how about this? Wherever those two fronts collide. Wherever your cold front and warm front collide. I don't think we have a triple point for Friday. I think we do today, though. Pretty sure we do today, but I don't think anything is going to be igniting off of it. Let me go check the Weather Prediction Center, because we do have a dry line and a cold front and a warm front. Yeah, the SPC says the dry line is just going to be the initiating boundary. There's not necessarily a cold front here. For today's setup. Which, yeah, you could see that. That's one way how you know the dry line's initiating. Look at the dry line. Let me go back for today. This is today. See how storms fired already? Storms are already ongoing. And if we look back at a supercell composite, or really anything that involves instability or ingredients here, you could see how your dew points still remain in place. So a dry line likely isn't going to wipe out the entire warm sector or the entire environment, whereas a cold front is going to sweep out that environment, and you can see the difference. So dry line initiates, the environment still stays the same. Now, yes, it does definitely take out a bunch of instability, obviously, but you're still going to have, your dew points are still going to be there. You're really not going to have any of those core things swept out. Your wind shear comes back perfectly fine on Friday. Your cape comes back perfectly fine. And again, your moisture is already in place. That's a cold front. See the difference? That's a cold front. See how you got a sharp cutoff between more dry air and moist air? And then your dry line, you have a dry line that is here. Your moist air, dry air, and your storms have already fired. You wouldn't even really be able to tell that storms have fired if you just look at this map. But there is ongoing storms, like right in here. So very interesting. That's why I like dry line setups because of how they fire. It's very intriguing. Very fascinating. Like I said, it's not going to wipe out the entire open warm sector. You're still going to have an open warm sector even for tomorrow. But you don't have any, I don't think you have any forcing mechanism for tomorrow, but you could see like you still have your whole open warm sector is still completely there. But yeah, Friday, I'm not overly interested in. Definitely a big time severe threat for damaging winds. Large hail should mainly be only related to, or really only on discrete supercells. And then tornadoes, we could see a few embedded in a QLCS in Oklahoma, Kansas, and maybe an isolated strong tornado embedded in a QLCS, and or an isolated strong tornado back up towards where those two fronts collide in northern Missouri, southern Iowa. Tornado watch will be issued here soon. Tornado watch will be issued at or before 6:15 p.m. Eastern time. Tornado watch is likely within the next 1 to 2 hours, as severe thunderstorm development is expected later this afternoon into the early evening hours. Conditional strong tornado threat could accompany any persistent supercell into the evening. There you go. Big time hail threat. Maybe even upwards of 3.5 inches in diameter. Isolated, significant damaging winds. And then the main threat for tornadoes, not very high tornado threat. Not a very high tornado threat there. You see that even sometimes on a slight risk day. Well, this is a slight risk for tornadoes. Really, the only reason we have an enhanced today is for hail and wind, so... Yeah, the wind threat will be greatest on the, towards the end of this MCD. Your wind threat will be highest over here. Let me draw that differently. Wind threat will be highest over here, closer to OKC. And then your tornado threat, wind threat, all hazards threat, is going to be all along the warm front, back down into here. So this area, that area that I've drawn in black, big time hail threat. A few tornadoes, maybe one strong, isolated damaging winds of 65 to 75 miles per hour. And in this yellow area, that's where you're looking at a lesser hail threat, maybe a few hailstones of 1 to 1.5 inch in diameter. If there is still a semi-discrete supercell at that time, we could see a hailstone maybe at 2 inches in diameter. It just depends if anything is still discrete towards the warm front. And then, of course, your weak tornado threat embedded inside the QLCS and that damaging wind threat could see a few gusts upwards of 75, 80 miles per hour if we see that QLCS form. This is from the Storm Prediction Center, Caleb. What you mean, where do you get these graphics at? This is from the Storm Prediction Center. Buddy calls himself a weather enthusiast. Ain't even seen the SPC. Oh yeah, I do see some bubblers. Southeast of Lubbock, Texas. Only use it when you believe a strong Torah is possible. Um, I do see the concern about overusing Sig 1, but here's the thing. Some people are misinterpreting Sig 1. Why is there... oh, I'm about to get some rain. Of course, all the lightning's to my north. Some people are misusing or like they're not understanding Sig 1. Sig 1 means the most probable peak intensity of a tornado is EF2. That means if everything is perfect and we see the highest tornado threat possible for that said day, the peak intensity, probable peak intensity, meaning it's not completely unreasonable, is EF2. So yes, I definitely understand. Like, this is useless. I don't know why we've got a SIG risk out here. I have no clue why there is a SIG risk for tornadoes out here. I don't know that. That I can agree with. Something like this, I have no idea why there is a SIG risk for tornadoes. We may end up with a brief spin up, but it would be just that, a brief, weak spin up tornado. Now, there is a Tor possible severe out here, but I don't think there's a reason for that to be a hatched risk. But back out here, like back towards Kansas and Oklahoma, I do understand that a little bit more because, you know, if storms do fire down here in Texas, there is a bit more favorable of an environment to where we could see a conditional strong tornado threat. So I get that. I get the SIG risk being all the way down into northern Texas. And maybe even into southeastern Kansas because, you know, if anything does fire on that warm front, see, something like that, you never know. It might be able to latch on that warm front and locally have a better environment to potentially produce upwards of an EF2 tornado. But that's where some people are confusing it at because some people are like, they still are using the wording as the old hatching. This is not the risk for EF2 plus tornadoes. We're not looking at EF2, EF3, maybe even a violent tornado today, right? That's not what we're looking at. The hatching is different. So this means we could see a couple weak tornadoes, and somewhere in that hatched area, there is a chance that we do see a brief, strong tornado. And because the hatching is pretty big, maybe a brief, strong tornado or two, because that is a pretty large hatched area. But again, back up here, like this 2% chance in Ohio, that doesn't make much sense to me. Because if a tornado does form, it's likely going to be weak and brief. So I feel like there's no point in that being hatched. But the big difference to remember is a SIG 1 means maximum tornado intensity is EF2. It doesn't mean an EF3, EF4 is possible. It's basically like if all the ingredients come together and it's not like the unreasonably high-end scenario here. If all ingredients come together and we see a discrete supercell fire in this environment, it could produce a strong tornado or two. But people are making it way harder than it needs to be. They're making it seem way more complicated than it actually is. It doesn't have to be that complicated. I'll give you a rundown of it again, just for those who aren't familiar with it, since it is relatively still new. Here you go. This is all your charts here from the Storm Prediction Center on their new categorical risks. SIG 1 for tornadoes. That means an EF0, EF1 tornado is the peak intensity. Sig 1 is the peak intensity is EF2. Sig 2 peak intensity is EF3. Sig 3 peak intensity is EF4, maybe even EF5. So it's not that difficult to understand. Just remember Sig less than Sig 1, a weak tornado possible, EF0, EF1. Sig 1, up to an EF2 possible. Sig 2, up to an EF3 possible. Sig 3, up to an EF5 possible. And Sig 3 is very, very rare. Very, very rare. Damaging winds is different. A non-hatched wind threat, damaging winds around or less than 74 miles per hour. Sig 1, damaging winds around or greater than 74 miles per hour possible. Sig 2, damaging winds around or greater than 84 miles per hour possible. Sig 3, damaging winds around or greater than 94 miles per hour possible. You'll only see a Sig 3 if the derecho is either ongoing or is an absolute certainty. Hail, no Sig. Large hail is expected to be less than 2 inches in diameter. Sig 1, large hail is expected to be at or greater than 2 inches in diameter. Sig 2, large hail is expected to be at or 3 inches. Is it at? I think it's 3.5 inches in diameter. I want to say Sig 2 for hail is 3.5 inches in diameter. I will just double check that. Pretty sure it's large hail at 3.5 inches or greater. Yeah, large hail at 3.5 inches diameter or greater. So it's not really that difficult to understand. People just make it way more difficult than it has to be. It'd be nice if they had all the probabilities like right here and what every single thing meant. Let's see here. See, and this shows you the verification. So in a Sig 3 risk, 5% of all tornadoes were EF4 or greater. In a Sig 3 risk, 14% of tornadoes were EF3 or greater. 22% were EF2 strong tornadoes or greater. So you can see how the majority of weak tornadoes were in either a less than a Sig 1 or in a Sig 1. That's where the majority of your weak tornadoes occurred in. And then your strong tornadoes verified very well in Sig 2 and Sig 3. So see 14% of all tornadoes in a Sig 1 were EF2 intensity. Oh, and they actually have it all right here. I'm stupid. Oh, wait, no, never mind. Yeah, they do. Because you could see here. So the yellow, that's Sig 1. Sig 1 is apparently, 2 to 3.5 inches in diameter. Or 3.49 inches in diameter. And then Sig 2 is 3.5 plus inches in diameter. Sig 1, 65 to 73 knots. Sig 2, 74 to 82 knots. Sig 3, 83 plus knots. And then again, Sig 1, Sig 2, Sig 3. So they actually have all of it right here. I didn't even realize that. So that's how... Wow, that's actually very, very impressive right there. You could see how literally the Sig 3 grouping, 22% of all tornadoes are strong. Or EF2. 22% are EF2 plus 14 plus 5. I would have to, let's see, 19. What is that? Like 41%? Probably did that dead wrong. Oh my word, I did math correctly with being sick. You have no excuse, Pez. So 41% of all tornadoes in the Sig 3 tornado risk were strong or greater. That is extraordinarily impressive. You guys think we'll have a Sig 3 tour this year? I mean, you never know. You never really know. It could happen, but nobody will ever know. If it happens, you know, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's not really something you can really predict too well. But I mean, I would say no because this tornado season is likely going to be below average. So I think you have a better bet on saying no, it's not going to happen. You got to think, Ben. Sig 3 risk, that's going to be very difficult to get. That's more difficult than a high risk. Because you could get a high risk. Our most common high risk is probably going to be Sig 2 30% Tor. That's probably going to be our most common high risk. Because Sig 3 is that's going to be very wild. I don't even know if we would have seen that last year at all. Maybe March 15th. Possibly. But I don't even know about that. I don't even know if that would have hit Sig 3 worthy. like 10% Sig 3? Lord have mercy. I don't even know a scenario. That would be insane. I feel like that would be pretty rare. That would have to be that is like the almost the most ultimate conditional tornado threat right there. If storms fire, nothing happens. If storms fire, EF4 or EF5 tornadoes. Like, hello? That would be like the world's most insane conditional day right there. I don't know about that. I think like a normal Sig 3 high I think a Sig 3 high risk for Tor is more likely than an enhanced risk Sig 3 for Tor in a given year cuz I feel like that's probably one of the more rare probabilities cuz that would be insane. Like literally that would be if storms fire there's a chance they produce violent EF4 EF5 tornadoes. I really don't think that type of risk would be issued. I feel like Sig 3 is going to be reserved for the upper echelon days where we're likely going to see a major tornado outbreak and maybe one or two tours could be violent. But let me tell you, if it ever does happen, it's probably going to be in Oklahoma or Kansas for a dry line. It would probably be in Oklahoma or Kansas. A 5% SIG 3 is not possible. That can't be issued. 45 non-SIG tour. Only instance I can think of would be a hurricane, but even in that case, if you're already at a 45 probability, you're probably going to be at a SIG 1. June 20th. You know what? It probably would be, Jake. That is actually a really good example, Jake. That is a really good example. The latest EF5 tornado, June 20th, 2025, we had such a volatile environment, but we didn't know if storms were going to fire. If they fired, they would likely produce EF3 plus tornadoes. But if they didn't fire, nothing would happen. That is actually that actually is probably one of the only instances where a 10 sig, or rather a 10% sig 3 would actually be needed in that case. That actually is a day where I could see that being issued. The thing is, I'm pretty sure that SPC was already experimenting with these risks, and I'm pretty sure they had only a SIG 1 out. I don't think they had a SIG 2 on that day. I remember seeing it somewhere, unless it was a photoshopped graphic, which it very well could have been. You never know. Let's see. Milwaukee could see a tornado warning tomorrow. I mean, it's a possibility considering you're on the edge of the main risk, so that is a possibility, but just make sure you're hyper weather aware. You'll be fine. December 15th, 2021. That would definitely be like a 15 sig 1 or 15 sig 2. It really wasn't that big of a bust, Ben, but okay. A lot of people called it a big bust, but it really wasn't. Now, I will agree any day of the week that it was an underperformance, but a bust, nah. I mean, what we had, over like 500 some damaging wind reports. Yeah. I was gonna try to argue not really with that one, Ben, but honestly, yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think the tornado threat was. The thing was, we did have a few weak tornadoes, but I don't think the 15 sig had anything, so yeah, I'll agree on that. The risk as a whole was definitely an underperformance. I think the significant wind threat, underperformed a bit. The Tor threat underperformed significantly. One could definitely argue a complete bust. And the hail threat was a complete bust. So I wouldn't say the risk as a whole was a full-blown bust, but it definitely was an underperformance to maybe a severe underperformance. But yeah, I mean, It was a very tricky forecast, that's for sure. And it didn't. It was one of the sharpest downtrends I've ever seen in a risk. Hold on. It's about to rain. Okay, yeah. I'm probably barely gonna get clipped by this rain shower down here. Yeah, I'll probably be watching the rocket launch, yeah. When is it? Like just after 6:30 or something? Somewhere around there. Logan, there's a lot of ways tomorrow underperforms. That's why I don't think we'll be seeing a moderate until maybe the afternoon update. Moderate for Friday? We don't even have any cams that are fully in range yet. I know the RFSA is in range now, but that model hasn't been doing the absolute best with the last few risks. I mean, look what it shows for today. Probably overdoing that quite a bit. Probably overdoing that convection quite a bit, especially behind the dry line. And then for tomorrow, that would definitely be a pretty big problem. The biggest problem here is that your afternoon convection isn't extraordinarily heavy, so it doesn't really hurt instability. And then you just get supercell mayhem. A lot of these would be a big problem, especially these in here. So, tomorrow, definitely keeping a close eye on it. And then Friday, like I said, big time QLCS event. That's what it looks like. Often these events are overly exaggerated on these model runs. Like on this model, it looks absolutely insane for Friday. But sometimes what actually ends up happening is these storms just don't end up being severe. So they look severe on simulated reflectivity, but then they actually form and they end up not being severe. It could be for multiple reasons. The two that I think of right off the bat is elevated because of like an outflow boundary or firing behind the front. And then another one is your instability is too low. Few reasons. Instability being too low, more elevated, and forcing not being that strong. So I think our greatest area for severe weather to watch will be up here in Iowa. Somewhere up in here. That's probably going to be where I'm going to be watching the most. And then I do still think we'll see a couple instances of some isolated large hail down here, a few spin-up weak tornadoes, maybe a conditional strong one, and then some isolated damaging wind. Damaging wind probably being the biggest problem there. So most interested in up here for Friday. But tomorrow, definitely going to be an interesting day. If we don't see that over-convection issue in the afternoon, tomorrow easily could end up having the threat for multiple long-tracked strong tornadoes. So tomorrow's definitely a big day to be weather aware, as we could see a few long-tracked strong tornadoes, maybe even an intense tornado or two, depending on if that over-convection is as widespread as models say. Like I said, even if it is this widespread, you would still have a tornado threat embedded in that over-convection. May, I still think is going to be inactive. I still stand by my forecast that I did in February. March, I expect it to be average, maybe a little bit above average. And then April, I expect to be a little below average. And May, I expect to probably be quite below average. And June is probably going to return to average to possibly above average activity. One of the weaker years for tornadoes? Not necessarily. It's just not going to be like 2024 and 2025. Yeah, and then hurricane season, you might as well just write that off. I mean, it's so far it looks cooked, but I mean, the stronger El Nino we get into, the more likely more inactive Atlantic season we'll see. Could be a pretty interesting Eastern Pacific season, though. If that El Nino is very strong, it could really increase the activity in the Eastern Pacific. I mean, after this, I mean, this is technically it's April right now, so. But yeah, I mean, next there's really not a lot of activity outside from so like once you get to, let's see, this is Friday, so that's April 4th. So from April 5th, right? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. April 4th is Saturday. My goodness, this sickness is taking a toll on me. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. April 4th is Saturday. So from April 4th all the way to like April 10th, I don't see anything. So I think we'll get like almost in a full week of inactivity. Now that could return a little bit sooner, like April 10th, you could see. There's your next system to watch there. But really, I mean, little to nothing. April 4th might have some isolated severe storms in Dixie Alley and near the surface low up into the New England states, northern mid-Atlantic. And like I said, really nothing there from April 4th all the way till at least April 9th. And then April 10th, maybe stuff starts to pick back up again. So I think the middle of April could be interesting. Very start of April, the middle of April, and then I almost guarantee we'll be tracking a big outbreak threat at the end of April. It's almost a given. Pretty much every year, the end of April has a big severe threat somewhere between the 25th and the 30th of April. All right, here's your new mesoanalysis here. We do have some storms firing on that warm front right in here. But they are definitely elevated. They're definitely firing in that elevated environment for sure. But as they grow more upscale, they definitely could switch towards more surface based. Yeah. See how these dew points and temperatures go away from each other right at the end? That's definitely a signal of it being more elevated. Now, it's not like extremely elevated. I'll show you an extremely elevated profile. There you go. That's an extremely elevated profile right there. See how big that gap is at the bottom? Very elevated profile. However, storms aren't going to fire there anyways. If they do, it will be light rain. Nothing severe. That's up in northeastern New Mexico. Let's see. Yeah, these storms, I mean, it's going to be worth just keeping an eye on them, but I think our main stuff will be along the dry line a little bit later. Definitely looks like a decent severe threat. So, I mean, be ready if you're in the main risk area today. You definitely be ready for widespread 60 to 70 mile an hour wind gusts, some gusts 75 to 80 miles per hour, especially as you get closer to OKC, the eastern side of that orange area. And then a few tornadoes will also be possible today. Maybe a strong tornado or two. That strong tornado threat definitely conditional. Main threat today is definitely very large hail, followed by damaging winds, and then tornadoes is the least of the concern, but still a very real possibility. Severe up to my north, but this area, 0 out of 10 chasing terrain up here. Now up here, it's not that bad, but you could see like in here, it's bad. Up here, it is terrible. Like Bedford, that's not terrible chasing terrain though. But yeah, I definitely wasn't going to chase today because I don't like to go up into central Virginia. Let's see, we got a new HRRR here. I'll show you guys that real quick. So, I mean, you could see even if storms do fire along that warm front right now, it's not a very favorable environment. If they do fire now, they're likely going to stay elevated. Your best chance would be closer towards sunset, 8 o'clock. If storms fire on the warm front, then you can have an issue. And you can see the dry line convex down here. Definitely sloppy. That definitely more of a clustered mode, more of a hail threat with that dry line southwestern Oklahoma. And yeah, you could also see these embedded bow echoes here. These would have a tornado threat with them and big time wind threat. Then your hail, wind, and torr threat southern Texas too. So keep an eye on Texas. That might be a bit of a sneaky severe threat there. Not being talked about nearly as much as the warm front in Oklahoma and the dry line in western Oklahoma. Yeah, one way or another, overconvection is going to be an issue tomorrow. Because all this rain has got to go somewhere. You've got all this rain that is heading towards our open, warm sector here, and cold front's pushing to the east-northeast, so there's only one area that it can go, and that is into the open, warm sector. Oh, did they confirm that proxy? I believe... Hold on. Okay, I gotta go try to find this real quick, y'all. Okay. I can't find it. I saw somewhere that somebody said there was an anticyclonic tornado yesterday. I don't know if that is the same tornado or not. That was confirmed. Is that close to Cleveland, perhaps? Okay, that's far northwest Ohio. Yeah, I haven't heard about that one. I don't think that was the possible anticyclonic tornado. I don't believe that was. We don't even need an uptrend, Tracy. We simply just, for tomorrow to go 15 sig 2, all that needs to happen is overconvection is not that big of an issue. That's all that needs to happen. You could see this. This is 17Z, 1 p.m. This looks really, really good. You're starting to get an open warm sector. Your environment's starting to get more and more potent by the hour, but then the HRRR overconvects the warm sector here. That's the problem. If that happens, I agree. We're not going to be seeing a 15 sig 2. But if that doesn't happen, I could see a 15 sig 2 issue for tomorrow. Either way, we're looking at a strong tornado threat tomorrow. Storms won't be elevated tomorrow. That's a given. Unless you see like zero cloud cover and the cloud cover completely erodes and then your temperatures soar into the mid 80s or the low 80s, which I don't think that's going to be a problem. You have so much, you have a good amount of moisture, a good moisture plume, and then your temperatures barely even touch the low 70s. So I doubt it. Surface inversions? You mean like cool pooling? I mean, yeah, but your convection's fairly weak and still fairly isolated. I mean, you can look here. You still have a bunch of cape. Even with all this over convection, you're still pretty good. So no, I don't think so. I doubt you'll see a surface inversion. Here, I'll take a sounding on the, let me go to a site where I can get a sounding so I could see if you're correct. I don't see a surface inversion. I see dry air in the mid-level, so I wonder if that's why these storms aren't growing upscale very well. Another issue with that could be our trough displacement. I think that is probably the main reason why storms don't grow as upscale or aren't as intense and are more of miniature supercells. Actually, even then, your trough isn't really that displaced. I don't see any surface inversion. I'm not sure what you're trying to get at. I just took a sounding on Pivotal. I don't see a surface inversion. I see that, Ben. But again, these are firing like on the warm front. The problem is temperatures are very high right now and they're firing clustered, so I don't expect there'll be much of an issue. So I'll see how this stuff goes. If it starts popping off like crazy, I may be back tonight. If not, I'm going to save my energy for tomorrow because I'm more interested in tomorrow's severe threat. Just stay weather aware. Big time hail threat today. Conditional strong tornado threat. So, yeah, definitely a decent severe threat for today. And tomorrow also a decent severe threat as well. Yeah, Lucy, I think you're displaced from the main defluence. Because you could see, let's see here. Yeah, there's quite a bit up into Illinois, southern Wisconsin. Let me look at the 700 millibar. Yeah, see, that's where your forcing is the best, right in here. Right in there is where your forcing is the best. So you're on the edge of that. Are you in the slight risk? Yeah, you're barely outside of it. I don't think you'll see much. I think if things do go boom and it goes crazy, even then your main threat is like one inch hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds, and a brief spin-up tornado. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end y'all. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I may be back tonight. If not, I'll be back tomorrow sometime between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. I don't know exactly when because I'm busy tomorrow afternoon. So I'll just have to see when things start popping off and how they look. So I may be back on tonight, like I said, but definitely plan on being live at some point tomorrow. So once again, appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank you, mods, for mod and chat, and I'll see you guys in either tonight's live stream or tomorrow's live stream. Have a great rest of your night. Goodbye. Stay safe, and I'll see you either later tonight or sometime tomorrow. Have a great rest of your night. Goodbye.